Ladies and gentlemen, this morning we rise in the authority of light, conscious that every day is a battlefield of purpose. We take our stand by truth, clothed with faith, declaring that our steps are ordered, our minds are guarded, and our paths are clear. Every resistance bows to divine instruction. Strength floods our spirit. Wisdom guides our choices, and peace governs our hearts as we advance with power, clarity, and holy alignment, walking alert, prayerful, and unwavering before the day unfolds. The morning is not just a transition from night to day. It is a spiritual gateway where authority is either asserted or surrendered. When a person wakes up, the first consciousness that comes alive is not the body, but the spirit. And whatever dominates that moment sets the tone for everything that follows. Spiritual authority in the morning begins with awareness, the understanding that you do not wake up as a victim of circumstances, but as a carrier of divine mandate. The day is already loaded with possibilities, encounters, decisions, and unseen battles. And the one who understands this does not rush into activity without first establishing dominion. Authority is not noise, it is position. And that position is enforced when the soul aligns with truth before distractions compete for attention. Many people lose the day before it starts because they wake up mentally tired, spiritually passive, and emotionally reactive, unaware that consciousness itself is a weapon. To be spiritually conscious in the morning is to recognize that life responds to spiritual laws before natural effort. The unseen realm has already been active while the body was asleep. Therefore, wisdom demands that the spirit takes the lead at dawn. Authority is enforced by intentional focus, choosing to acknowledge God's supremacy over time, space, and events. When this consciousness is absent, the day controls the person. But when it is present, the person governs the day. This governance is not arrogance. It is alignment with divine order. The mind is trained to reject fear, confusion, and heaviness before they settle. And the heart is conditioned to expect direction, favor, and strength. Morning authority means you refuse to let emotions, news, pressure, or urgency dictate your posture. You establish first who is in charge. Spiritual authority also flows from identity, knowing who you are before you engage with what you must do. Many people pray from desperation, but authority comes from revelation. When identity is clear, prayer is not begging, but enforcing realities that already exist in the spirit. Morning consciousness reminds the soul that you are not alone, you are not weak, and you are not undefined. You are a steward of grace, backed by heaven and sent into the day with purpose. This understanding silences inferiority and awakens boldness without aggression. It trains the heart to speak with confidence, walk with assurance, and decide with clarity. Authority begins internally before it manifests externally. The discipline of morning spiritual consciousness retrains the mind away from anxiety and toward expectation. Instead of asking what will go wrong, the heart is anchored in what has already been settled by God. This posture does not deny challenges, but it refuses to magnify them above divine capacity. Every day carries resistance, but resistance only matters when authority is forgotten. When the spirit is alert early, it becomes sensitive to instruction, warnings, and promptings that preserve destiny. Many accidents, delays, and regrets are avoided simply because someone listened inwardly before rushing outwardly. Authority in the morning sharpens discernment, allowing a person to know when to speak, when to be silent, when to move, and when to wait. Spiritual authority is also sustained by alignment, aligning thoughts, words, and intentions with divine will. The morning is the easiest time to achieve this because the soul is less cluttered. Whatever you meditate on at dawn sinks deeper and lasts longer. When truth is planted early, lies struggle to grow later. This is why consistent morning consciousness builds long-term stability. It creates an inner government that regulates reactions throughout the day. Even when pressure arises, something inside remains steady, reminding the soul that control was already established. Authority is not lost because of challenges. It is lost because of forgetfulness. Morning consciousness prevents that forgetfulness by daily reminding the spirit of its position. Another dimension of authority in the morning is vocal alignment. Words spoken early often frame perception. When the mouth agrees with divine purpose, the heart follows and the body cooperates. Silence in the morning can be dangerous if it allows negative thoughts to speak first. Conscious authority ensures that truth, faith, and confidence take precedence. This is not superstition. It is spiritual psychology grounded in eternal principles. The human spirit responds to words, especially words spoken with belief. Morning declarations are not rituals. They are reinforcements of reality. They train the inner man to respond correctly under pressure. Spiritual consciousness also establishes boundaries. It sets limits on what is allowed to influence the heart. Not every call, message, or demand deserves immediate access. Authority teaches discernment, understanding that urgency is not always priority. The morning belongs to alignment before engagement. Those who master this are rarely overwhelmed because they are already fortified before the demands arrive. Their peace is not accidental, it is cultivated. Their strength is not situational, it is sustained. They move through the day with an inner witness that guides them beyond logic. Over time, consistent morning authority transforms character. Fear gives way to confidence, confusion yields to clarity, and instability is replaced by focus. The spirit becomes trained to rise first, leading the soul and body into order. This is how spiritual authority matures, not through dramatic moments, but through daily consciousness. Each morning becomes a declaration that destiny will not be negotiated, purpose will not be delayed, and alignment will not be compromised. The individual becomes spiritually proactive rather than reactive, intentional rather than impulsive, grounded rather than scattered. This posture silently shapes outcomes, attracts favor, and repels unnecessary conflict, establishing dominion long before the visible day unfolds. Victory through prayer is not a reaction to trouble. It is a posture of alignment that precedes engagement. Prayer is not merely asking for help. It is synchronizing with divine intent so that outcomes are shaped before actions begin. When prayer becomes the foundation of the day, victory is no longer something hoped for. It is something enforced. Many misunderstand prayer as an emergency tool, but its highest function is strategic positioning. Through prayer, the Spirit steps into agreement with heaven, and that agreement releases authority over circumstances that have not yet manifested. This is why prayer done early carries unusual power, because it confronts the day while it is still undefined. Divine alignment is the secret that turns prayer into victory. Alignment means the heart, mind, and will are adjusted to reflect divine purpose rather than personal impulse. When alignment is missing, prayer becomes emotional noise. But when alignment is present, even simple words carry weight. Victory flows where alignment exists because heaven backs what reflects its will. This alignment requires humility, the willingness to yield opinions, expectations, and timelines. Prayer then becomes less about changing God's mind and more about allowing God's perspective to shape decisions. From that place, actions become precise and resistance loses leverage. Prayer also sharpens spiritual vision, enabling a person to see beyond surface events. Many battles are not physical, yet people fight them with physical energy and emotional frustration. Prayer relocates the conflict to its proper dimension, where solutions already exist. Victory is often delayed not because of lack of effort, but because of fighting on the wrong level. Through prayer, the Spirit receives insight, revealing when to advance, when to pause, and when to shift direction. This insight saves strength and preserves peace. Alignment through prayer ensures that energy is invested where it matters most. Another dimension of victory through prayer is the establishment of inner order. Disorder inside always produces defeat outside. Prayer calms the soul, quiets distractions, and brings thoughts into submission. When the inner world is aligned, external pressure loses its power to dominate. Many people lose battles because anxiety controls their reactions. Prayer dismantles anxiety by replacing it with trust. Trust does not deny challenges, it simply refuses to let them rule. From that posture, victory becomes a byproduct of stability rather than struggle. Prayer also reinforces spiritual laws that govern outcomes. Life operates by principles whether acknowledged or not. Prayer aligns a person with these principles, allowing grace to flow unhindered. One of these laws is consistency. Sporadic prayer produces unstable results, but sustained prayer builds momentum. Over time, the spirit becomes trained to default to alignment rather than panic. This consistency creates spiritual muscle, enabling endurance during prolonged pressure. Victory then becomes progressive, unfolding steadily rather than dramatically. Divine alignment through prayer also affects relationships and environments. When a person is aligned, they carry an atmosphere that influences interactions. Conflicts are resolved with wisdom rather than force. Decisions are made with clarity rather than haste. Favor follows alignment because favor responds to order. Prayer tunes the heart to recognize opportunities disguised as interruptions and dangers disguised as familiarity. This sensitivity protects destiny. Many losses are not caused by obvious attacks, but by subtle misalignments. Prayer exposes these early, allowing correction before damage occurs. Prayer is also an act of submission, and submission attracts empowerment. The paradox of victory is that it comes through yielding. When the will submits to divine direction, resistance loses its authority. Prayer dismantles pride, which is often the root of unnecessary battles. Pride insists on control, while prayer embraces guidance. Through this, strength is renewed, not because circumstances change immediately, but because perspective does. A renewed perspective transforms how challenges are interpreted and handled. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable when viewed through alignment. Victory through prayer is sustained by obedience. Alignment demands response. Prayer that produces victory always leads to action that reflects what was received. This obedience is not forced, it flows naturally from conviction. When instruction is followed, grace supports execution. Many people pray sincerely but ignore guidance, then wonder why victory seems delayed. Alignment is complete only when revelation becomes practice. Prayer prepares the ground, but obedience activates the harvest. Over time, a lifestyle of prayer establishes a rhythm where victory becomes familiar. Battles no longer shock the soul because confidence is anchored in alignment. Even when outcomes differ from expectations, peace remains intact. This peace is itself a form of victory, proof that alignment is stronger than circumstance. Prayer trains the heart to trust timing, understanding that delay is not denial and silence is not absence. From this place, perseverance replaces frustration and hope replaces fear. As alignment deepens, prayer becomes less verbal and more conscious. The spirit learns to stay connected throughout the day, maintaining awareness beyond designated moments. This continuous alignment turns ordinary actions into spiritual expressions. Work becomes worship, decisions become declarations, and endurance becomes testimony. Victory is no longer measured only by visible success, but by sustained faithfulness. the soul learns to rest, even while contending, confident that alignment guarantees eventual manifestation, knowing that prayer has already secured the outcome in the unseen, shaping events quietly, steadily, and irresistibly. Mental clarity is a spiritual asset, not merely a psychological state. The mind is the primary battlefield, where victories are either secured or lost long before they appear in actions and outcomes. Every resistance that manifests externally first seeks access internally through thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. When the mind is unguarded, resistance does not need strength. It only needs permission. Protection begins with awareness, recognizing that not every thought deserves attention, and not every emotion deserves agreement. Mental clarity allows the individual to distinguish between what is real and what is merely loud, between what is urgent and what is important. Without clarity, even good intentions become vulnerable to distraction and confusion. Resistance often disguises itself as pressure, fear, or urgency. It rarely announces itself openly. Instead, it seeks to overwhelm the mind with multiple options, conflicting voices, and imagined consequences. When clarity is absent, the mind becomes reactive, jumping from one thought to another without direction. This mental fragmentation weakens resolve and drains energy. Protection against resistance requires the discipline of mental focus, the ability to anchor thoughts to truth rather than circumstances. Clarity does not eliminate challenges, but it prevents them from multiplying unnecessarily. A clear mind sees one problem instead of 10 illusions. Mental clarity is sustained by intentional filtering. Every day, information competes for attention, and whatever dominates attention eventually shapes belief. Resistance thrives where the mind consumes without discernment. Protection involves choosing what to allow into the inner space. Not every conversation, memory, or speculation deserves residence in the mind. When the mental environment is clean, resistance struggles to take root. Clarity sharpens discernment, enabling the individual to sense when a thought carries peace or when it carries unrest. This sensitivity acts as an early warning system, alerting the soul before resistance gains momentum. Fear is one of the most common tools of resistance, and it always targets the mind first. Fear amplifies uncertainty and minimizes capacity. Mental clarity counters fear by restoring perspective. Perspective reminds the mind of past victories, present resources, and divine support. Protection against fear is not denial, it is correct interpretation. A clear mind interprets challenges accurately without exaggeration. This accuracy prevents panic and preserves strength. Resistance loses power when it cannot distort perception. Another form of resistance is mental fatigue. Fatigue dulls discernment and lowers defenses. When the mind is exhausted, it becomes susceptible to negative patterns and impulsive decisions. Clarity requires rest, reflection, and renewal. Protection involves recognizing limits and honoring them. A rested mind resists pressure more effectively than a strained one. Resistance often waits for moments of exhaustion to attack, knowing that clarity is weakest then. Guarding mental energy is therefore an act of spiritual wisdom. Mental clarity also governs emotional regulation. Emotions are valid but unstable guides. Resistance manipulates emotions to influence decisions. Anger pushes toward rash action. Sadness pulls toward withdrawal. Anxiety drives haste. Clarity allows emotions to be acknowledged without being obeyed. Protection means the mind retains authority over emotional impulses. When clarity is present, emotions become signals rather than commanders. This balance preserves dignity and prevents regret. Many defeats occur not because of lack of strength, but because of unregulated emotion. Resistance also exploits imagination. The mind can create scenarios that feel real but have no substance. Imagined failure can be as paralyzing as actual defeat. Clarity disciplines imagination, training it to align with hope rather than fear. Protection against imagined resistance involves challenging thoughts with truth. The mind must learn to ask whether a thought is factual, helpful, or productive. If it is none of these, it does not deserve attention. This practice strengthens mental resilience over time. Clarity is reinforced through routine alignment. Consistent habits of reflection, prayer, and meditation stabilize the mind. Resistance thrives in inconsistency because unpredictability weakens defenses. A disciplined mental routine creates familiarity with peace. When peace becomes familiar, disturbance becomes noticeable. Protection then becomes easier because the mind quickly recognizes what does not belong. This recognition prevents prolonged exposure to harmful thought patterns. Mental clarity also enhances decision-making. Resistance often pushes toward haste, urging quick choices without adequate insight. A clear mind is not rushed. It understands that speed is not always efficiency. Protection involves patience, allowing clarity to mature before action. This patience frustrates resistance because it removes impulsivity from the equation. Decisions made from clarity carry confidence and reduce regret. Another layer of protection is mental agreement. Resistance gains strength when the mind agrees with negative narratives. Agreement does not require verbal affirmation. Silent acceptance is enough. Clarity breaks harmful agreements by replacing them with truth. When the mind consistently agrees with strength, hope, and purpose, resistance loses its influence. The inner dialogue shifts from defeat to expectation. This shift alters behavior naturally, without force. Mental clarity also affects physical well-being. Stress generated by mental confusion manifests in the body. Protection of the mind therefore preserves energy and health. A calm mind supports endurance. Resistance seeks to wear down the body by overloading the mind. Clarity interrupts this cycle by restoring order. Order reduces strain, and reduced strain increases capacity. Over time, a protected mind develops spiritual confidence. Confidence is not arrogance, it is settled assurance. This assurance makes resistance predictable and less intimidating. The mind learns that not every challenge requires alarm. Some require wisdom, others require patience, others require silence. Clarity differentiates between these responses. This differentiation prevents wasted effort. As clarity deepens, the mind becomes proactive rather than defensive. Instead of constantly reacting to resistance, it anticipates and neutralizes it early. This proactive posture creates momentum. Progress becomes steady because interruptions are minimized. The individual moves forward with focus, unshaken by distractions. Mental clarity then becomes a lifestyle, not a temporary state. Protection against resistance is ultimately about stewardship. The mind is entrusted with thoughts, ideas, and perceptions that shape destiny. How these are managed determines outcomes. A clear mind honors this responsibility by guarding its gates carefully. Over time, this stewardship produces consistency, peace, and effectiveness. Resistance finds fewer entry points, fewer allies, and less influence. And composed, capable of navigating complexity without confusion, pressure without panic, and opposition without surrender, maintaining strength and direction regardless of external intensity. Purpose is the invisible compass that gives meaning to every step a person takes. Without purpose, movement becomes random, energy is wasted, and effort feels heavy. When steps are guided by faith, direction replaces confusion, and intention replaces anxiety. Faith does not remove uncertainty from life, but it gives the courage to move even when the full picture is not visible. Purpose-driven steps are not impulsive. They are informed by conviction, shaped by trust, and sustained by hope. Each decision is weighed not only by convenience, but by alignment with a higher calling that gives the journey coherence. Faith-guided movement begins with clarity of assignment. A person must understand why they are here before deciding how to move. When purpose is clear, distractions lose their appeal. Opportunities are evaluated not by how attractive they appear, but by how well they fit the assignment. This clarity protects the heart from comparison and competition, two forces that often derail destiny. Faith allows the individual to remain content in their lane, confident that progress does not require imitation. Steps taken in faith may appear slow to observers, but they are steady and deliberate, preserving strength for the long journey. Purpose-driven steps require trust in timing. Faith understands that delay is sometimes preparation, not denial. Many abandon purpose because results are not immediate. Faith anchors the heart in the belief that growth often happens invisibly before it becomes visible. This trust prevents frustration and discouragement. Each step, no matter how small, is seen as progress rather than insignificance. Faith transforms patience into power, enabling endurance without resentment. This endurance is critical because purpose rarely unfolds without resistance. Guidance by faith also shapes decision-making under pressure. When challenges arise, purpose provides context. Problems are no longer personal attacks, but obstacles on a meaningful path. This perspective changes responses. Instead of panic, there is prayer. Instead of retreat, there is reflection. Faith reminds the soul that difficulty does not equal failure. Many significant advancements occur during seasons of uncertainty. Purpose-driven individuals interpret pressure as refinement rather than rejection. This interpretation preserves confidence and prevents unnecessary retreat. Another dimension of faith-guided steps is obedience to inner conviction. Faith listens before it acts. It values instruction over impulse. This obedience often requires humility because guidance may contradict logic or comfort. Purpose-driven faith chooses alignment over convenience. Such obedience attracts grace because grace supports obedience. When a person moves in response to conviction rather than fear, resources align unexpectedly. Doors open at the right time, and support appears where it was not anticipated. This reinforces trust in guidance beyond human calculation. Faith also guards against stagnation. Fear often disguises itself as caution, convincing people to remain where they are under the illusion of safety. Purpose challenges discomfort. Faith-driven steps may feel risky, but they are calculated by trust, not recklessness. Growth demands movement, and movement demands faith. Remaining still out of fear slowly erodes confidence. Purpose-driven faith restores momentum by reminding the heart that progress requires courage. Each step taken in faith strengthens the ability to take the next one. Purpose-driven movement also affects how setbacks are processed. Faith reframes setbacks as lessons rather than verdicts. When a step does not produce the expected outcome, purpose prevents despair. The individual reflects, adjusts, and continues. This resilience is a hallmark of faith-guided living. Purpose keeps the vision intact even when the path shifts. Faith allows flexibility without compromise, understanding that the route may change while the destination remains the same. Faith-guided steps cultivate inner peace. Peace does not come from certainty, but from trust. When purpose is clear, the soul rests even while moving. Anxiety decreases because the heart knows it is not wandering aimlessly. This peace enhances effectiveness, allowing clearer thinking and better choices. Purpose-driven peace also influences others. People are drawn to those who move with quiet confidence rather than frantic urgency. This influence expands impact beyond personal goals. Over time, purpose Purpose-driven steps build consistency. Consistency outperforms intensity in the long run. Faith sustains consistency by renewing motivation during dull or difficult seasons. Purpose reminds the soul why perseverance matters. This consistency compounds progress, producing results that appear sudden, but are actually the product of faithful steps taken over time. Guidance by faith also sharpens sensitivity to redirection. Purpose does not mean rigidity. Faith remains open to correction. When direction changes, the purpose-driven individual adjusts without losing identity. This adaptability prevents stagnation and preserves relevance. Faith trusts that guidance evolves as capacity increases. Each season prepares for the next. Ultimately, purpose-driven steps guided by faith create a life of intentional movement. The individual is not driven by fear, pressure, or applause, but by conviction. Each step, whether celebrated or unseen, contributes to a larger narrative. Faith gives meaning to ordinary actions and strength to extraordinary demands. The journey becomes coherent, resilient, and impactful, marked by steady advancement, inner assurance, and unwavering commitment to the path that has been entrusted, moving forward with confidence even when the terrain is unfamiliar.